Fear. It's a feeling we all know, right? It can paralyze us, it can define us, it can make our world feel so much smaller. But what does it actually take to conquer a deep-seated terror? Well, we're about to dive into an incredible true story of a man who did just that, and it's taken directly from his autobiography of Men and Mountains. You've definitely heard these famous words before, spoken by Franklin D. Roosevelt. Fun fact, he was actually a friend of the man whose story we're telling today, William Douglas. And for Douglas, this idea, well, it became the core lesson of his entire life, a truth he learned through an experience that nearly killed him. So you see, this isn't just a story about learning to swim. Nope, it's about staring into the face of pure, absolute terror and somehow finding the will to overcome it. Let's explore William Douglas's journey into, and more importantly, out of, deep water. Every great fear has an origin story. And for Douglas, it all began not in some scary pool, but in the powerful surf of the Pacific Ocean. It was a single moment that planted a seed of terror he would carry for years and years. So it all started when he was just a toddler, a really, really bad experience at the beach. That initial fear was then kind of rekindled years later when he decided, okay, I'm going to learn to swim. But it was a single, terrifying incident, what he calls his misadventure at the YMCA pool, that turned that old childish fear into a full-blown, life-altering phobia. And hearing it in his own words is what's so powerful here. I mean, his father was right there with him laughing, but for a little kid, the sheer force of the water was just completely overpowering. It was this terrifying loss of control, a feeling that would come back to haunt him in a really big way. Okay, so let's get to the event that defined his fear. Years have passed since the beach incident. Now he's 10 years old at the YMCA pool, just starting to feel a little bit at ease when a seemingly harmless prank goes horribly, horribly wrong. So just picture the scene. He's all alone, just sitting there waiting for the other kids. This big, 18-year-old bruiser of a kid comes in, calls him skinny, and with basically no warning, just picks him up and throws him into the 9-foot deep end. In an instant, his world flips from quiet waiting to just sheer panic. And this is a perfect example of how fear just completely distorts reality. As he's sinking, those 9 feet might as well have been 90. His lungs were already burning before he even hit the bottom. He had this rational plan to push off the bottom, but terror was already flooding in and washing that plan away. His first try to get to the surface, it fails. He comes up so slowly, all he can see is the murky yellow water. Real panic starts to set in. He gasps for air but just swallows water instead. He's flailing, reaching for a rope that isn't even there. He tries to scream, but nothing comes out. He's completely helpless. The weight of the water just sucks him down again. And this is where the fear turns into something else, something primal. He describes it as this stark terror that you can't reason with, that has no control. It's the kind of thing that, unless you've been there, you just can't understand. It's pure, uncontrollable panic. And then his body just shuts down. His limbs, the very things he needs to save himself, are like dead weights. They're stiff, rigid, literally paralyzed by fear. His mind is screaming for help, but his body just refuses to obey. And then, on his third trip down, something really strange happens. The struggle just stops. The terror vanishes, and it's replaced by this quiet, peaceful drowsiness. He feels like he's floating, almost like he's in his mother's arms. He just lets go. This is the moment he believes he is dying. He survives, of course. Someone pulls him out just in time. But the psychological damage is huge. So the next part of his story isn't just about surviving, it's about actively choosing to fight back against the fear that now basically controls his entire life. And this wasn't just some bad memory he could shake off. It was a handicap. For years, anytime he got near water, fishing, boating, even just wading in, that icy horror, as he called it, would come right back. His legs would lock up. The fear literally stole the simple joys of life that he so desperately wanted to experience. So finally, he decides he's had enough. He hires an instructor, and this instructor uses a brilliant method. It's like a blueprint for overcoming any deep-seated fear. He didn't just teach him swim strokes. He deconstructed the entire act of swimming. He broke it all down, piece by piece, to rebuild Douglas's relationship with water from scratch. First, for weeks, it was just going back and forth across the pool on a rope, just to build confidence. Then, hundreds of repetitions of simply learning to breathe correctly. And finally, weeks of just kicking at the side of the pool, over and over, until his legs finally learned to obey his command again.
So after months and months of this methodical practice, his instructor tells him, "You can swim now." But Douglas knows the real test isn't about his technique. It's about facing that terror when he's completely and utterly alone.
I mean, what a powerful statement. He realized that the instructor had built a swimmer, but only he, himself, could conquer the fear that was still living inside him. The physical training was over, but the psychological battle, that was his to fight alone. So he goes to Lake Wentworth in New Hampshire. He gets out into the middle of the lake, he puts his face in the water, and all he sees is that bottomless blackness. And right on cue, the old sensation comes creeping back. But this time is different. Instead of panicking, he confronts it. He actually talks to it. He mocks it. "Well, Mr. Terror," he says, "what do you think you can do to me?" And just like that, the terror fled.
And so he swam on. Not just for a few feet. He swam 2 miles across that lake, from Triggs Island all the way to Stamp Act Island. An act of pure triumph, proving to himself once and for all that he was finally the master of his fear.
So, what's the ultimate lesson in all of this? Well, Douglas's whole experience gave him this incredibly profound insight into the very nature of fear and life itself, and it brings us right back to that famous Roosevelt's quote. This is the absolute core of his discovery. Having experienced what felt like dying, that quiet, peaceful oblivion, he realized the real enemy was never death itself. The true enemy was the paralyzing, irrational terror of it. And here's the amazing paradox. By staring down the ultimate fear, his will to live didn't get weaker. It got so much more intense. Conquering that terror gave him a profound appreciation for life, for every single breath he took. At last, he was free. And not just free to swim. He was free to live without that haunting shadow following him around. He was free to walk the trails, to climb mountains, to live a life that was no longer limited by what he was afraid of. You know, Douglas's story is really a testament to this idea that our deepest fears, once we finally turn and confront them, can lead to our greatest liberation. We all have our own version of deep water. The only question his story leaves us with is this: are we ready to face it?